Welcome, everybody, to today's webinar, which is about the K and TK values and some tips and tricks in IOL calculation. My name is Jascha Wendelstein. I'm from Germany or working in Austria and Switzerland. And it'll be my pleasure to get you into those IOL calculation topics. The choice of using the K values, K1, K2, and here in yellow, the TK1 and TK2 values. So TK values. What are our goals in healthcare? Basically, we want to keep clinical routine as simple as possible. Any complicated process is prone to errors, and we want to minimize the potential for any errors. Let's look at that in biometry. There are a few tweaks we can do, or a few tweaks we can think about when trying to simplify biometry. One of those things would be getting rid of special constants for short eyes, long eyes, or any special eyes, so we don't have to change anything. Basically, we want values that work with any eye and give us the best result. Obviously, the new calculation formula all are designed to be all-around performers, so they simplify clinical routines, and then we want to use keratometry values that do not penalize us for missing special eyes, keratoconus eyes, DMAC eyes, and the TK values were designed for that regard or for that aim. So we are not penalized when we miss those eyes. What's of interest and what is to know about the TK value? So the concept is that we have basically platforms where we have large amounts of surgical outcomes, which used to be the ULIP website. Now it's the IOLCon website, and there are constants for IOL calculation and the different IOL models there that are established. And our aim is now to keep those established constants. We want to keep what works. We want to keep the power of normal corneas as they are with those TK values, but we want to change the power of abnormal corneas and make it work with those established constants. So we don't have to establish new constants. We can use it. We are not prone to make mistakes looking to switch any constants. We just want to make it work with what we have. Basically, the TK value is a total corneal power value that is derived from a Gould-Strand thick lens cornea model. There are some steps where it is calculated to a so-called total radius and then back calculated into power. Basically, the end product is that the total radius can be used with the preferred keratometric index that you use for the K models, for the K values too. So you can stick to 1.332, 1.3375, whatever you use, and use it on your biometer. Now let's have a deeper look. Do those promises work? Do the TK values actually work? Let's have a look at some special eyes to gain a bit of insight into that and look deeper into the hard nuts, which are basically the cases which give trouble to most people I know when calculating a lens. So it's keratoconus eyes, eyes after laser vision correction, and triple DMAC or eyes after DMAC. That'll make you think what to do and how to calculate those eyes. And let's see how the TK values work for that. What are the problems that are common among those eyes or that are shared among those eyes? Basically, with the keratometer index, we convert the anterior curvature of the cornea, have an implicated corneal thickness and posterior curvature, which is basically dependent on the anterior to posterior radius. This works in normal eyes pretty well, but in special eyes like keratoconus, like laser vision correction, or like after DMAC or with DMAC, this no longer works and we run into problems in calculating those eyes. Let's start with the case of the keratoconus eyes. Do TK values work for that? There was a very nice publication here, which was a joint venture of the DMAC Eye Institute and Bascom-Palmer's Institute. I think it's one of the best studies to the topic keratoconus and IOL calculation out there. Let's dive into it. And here we can see on the left side, there are the milder cases of keratoconus. Basically, both meridians are below 50 diopters, at least if we calculate them with a keratometer index of 1.3375. On the right side, we find the severe cases of keratoconus, where one of the two meridians has a power of 50 diopters or more. If you look at the left side, basically, if you look at each formula, there's a K and TK version to find. And if you look closer, you will see that basically each single formula performed better when TK values were used over K values. The top performers are mostly formula variations or versions that use the TK values. Among the top 6 or top 7 performers here, we have 5 which were using the TK values. On the right side, we see the severe keratoconus eyes. Here we have the special formula variations of the Kane formula, the Barrett formula, which are designed to work in keratoconus eyes. And even here we can see the trend that the Barrett keratoconus formula works better when using TK values instead of K values. We can also see that the SRKT formula has some trend errors that are favorable in those eyes. Still, I find very interesting that the new formulas or the new generation formulas like the EVO formula, K6 or Kane formula all work, well, let's say pretty well in those eyes using the TK values. At least they work better than the K value using versions of those formulae. So the TK values seem to work very well in keratoconus eyes and are our way to go. So first case is closed keratoconus eyes. TK values showed some utility in those eyes, and we should stick to using TK values when looking or when trying to calculate keratoconus eyes. Let's jump over to the next example. It's something that I call the unhappy triad, which is the combination of DMAC, cataract extraction, and IOL implantation. Let's look a bit deeper into it. When do we use TK values? When don't we use TK values? Here are 2 studies of some colleagues of mine and I, where we looked at eyes with triple DMAC surgery with biometric measurements before and after the surgery, and to basically combine both outcomes into one table. The results are pretty clear. If we look at the post-operative K values with the biometry, so basically eyes that already received a triple DMAC procedure still have the cataract, and the cataract needs to be exchanged. In those eyes, K values and TK values work really well, especially the TK values lead to better results than the K values. So TK values should be used in eyes after DMAC surgery. If we look at eyes before the DMAC, so either if you do cataract surgery first and have a stage procedure, a 2-stage procedure where you wait 4 weeks or 2 months or something like that, or where you go for triple DMAC in one procedure, in a single procedure, TK values no longer work good. Here, K values performed a bit better than TK values. And if we are using here a formula we call IOP1D, basically if we are using an offset that takes the hyperopic shift into account, it still tends to work even better than the K values. So triple DMAC or cataract surgery before DMAC surgery should not use TK values. We should use K values, or even better, an offset correction for those eyes. The reason is pretty clear. If we look at a cornea after DMAC, there's no longer an edema in the cornea. So basically what we measure is what we get after surgery. TK values are perfect for the purpose, so use them. Why TK values do not work before before triple DMAC or before DMAC surgery is also pretty clear. We have an altered cornea, we have an altered anterior curvature, we have an altered posterior curvature, we have an altered thickness. So basically, instead of having only one mistake from the altered anterior curvature, we have 3 sources of mistake in there. So TK values are not the route to go, neither is ray tracing. At least if it takes the full thickness of the cornea into account, we should stick to K values in those cases. So 2 kind of eyes where we should use TK values. With pre-DMAC or triple DMAC cataract cases, we should not use it. Let's look at the laser vision correction eyes, or eyes after laser vision correction. The big problem with those patients, of course, is the high expectations. Basically, there's a reason why they underwent laser vision correction in the first place. That makes the results even more interesting than in cases of keratoconus. Let's look at the literature. So there are a few studies that look at the topic of TK values in laser vision correction eyes. I made the troubles to collect them into one table. So if you look at the table on the left, you can basically see the results of those studies. And if you look at basically formula versions or variations where you have K and TK values, let's look at the Barrett True K and the Barrett True K TK here. You can compare basically for each study. Let's look at the study of Yu et al., where we have a mean absolute error of 0.43 if we use the Barrett True K with TK values, whereas the same was a bit higher with a mean absolute error of, or mean absolute prediction error of 0.51 diopters if we use K values. The same goes basically for the Huygens formula. The Huygens formula in combination with TK values works a bit better than the Huygens L formula. The statistical corrections in the Huygens L formula come from older ablation profiles. They do not necessarily represent the newer ablation profiles. So try to make use of the TK values if you run into those. There was a very nice review or report by the American Academy of Ophthalmology by Seth Pantanelli, who basically made those bar charts where you can also see that the Huygens TK formula and the Barrett True K formula, especially in combination with TK values, work very good or work very well in those eyes. TK values are of use in laser vision correction eyes. Now the big question is, it worked in all those special eyes, or TK values showed utility in all those special eyes. But the big question now is, did we overfit? Do they still work in normal eyes, or do they alter normal eyes? We did a large study to just have a look at that. Do we have to worry about overfitting? Basically, what we did is we combined the data sets of several centers in Europe, Asia, and the United States. And we were able to collect 116,982 eyes, quite a large amount. The first question we had were, do TK values change the corneal equivalent power in normal eyes? We did three things. We compared K and TK mean values in the data set. We looked at how many eyes had a difference of 0.25 diopters, and we looked at the percentage of eyes within a difference of 0.5 diopters between K and TK values. You can find the results in the table here. So basically, you can see each center, and then at the bottom of the table, you can see the total of all eyes. You can see those with a keratometric index or keratometer index of 1.3375 or 1.332, but the differences are minuscule. Basically, if you look here at right and left eyes, around 94% of all eyes were within a difference of 0.25 diopters between K and TK values, and more than 99% of all eyes were within half a diopter of difference between K and TK values. So the differences here in the data set regarding equivalent corneal power were very, very, very small and not big enough in around 94% cases to change IOL power. But we wanted to have a deeper look into that and looked if we could find some trend errors, or if we could figure out some eyes that were very prone to larger differences. Basically, if you look here at the difference between TK and K values plotted against certain values like central corneal thickness, you can see there's no trend. If we plot it against astigmatism magnitude, we can see that there's not a trend to be observed. If we plot it against the magnitude of K or the K values in diopters, we were also not able to find any differences. But that was clear because TK values use the anterior to posterior radius. Obviously, we could find a significant trend or clear trend regarding the difference between TK minus K and the anterior posterior radius ratio. Obviously, if you are doing statistics for a study, you always have to ask yourself, where are my mistakes? Do I represent some wrong data? We looked at a very, very large data set with almost 117,000 eyes. So obviously there was some room for mistake. We could not get through each single eye. Some eyes slipped the quality control. So there were some eyes that were probably eyes after myopic laser vision correction in there. We published the CRW1 index last year, which is an index that was specifically designed to find those eyes. And indeed, we could find that the differences between K and TK values were much, much higher in eyes that had a suspicious CRW1 index. But then again, the number of those eyes were only 497 in the data set, so less than 1% of the data set, which is pretty much neglectable and should not be a confounder for study results. Question number 2, the obvious question: do TK values change the predicted refraction for the IOL power calculation formula? Do they lead to a choice of a different lens? We again had 3 questions. We compared the predicted refraction with K and TK values for the same lens. How many eyes had a difference of less than 0.25 diopters, and how many eyes were within a difference of 0.5 diopters? Same question, just a slight turn to it. And if we look at the results are even nearer. So more than 94, 95, 97, and 98, depending on the formula, percent of the cases were within a quarter of a diopter or a quarter diopter, and more than 99% of the cases, again, were within half a diopter. So there were only very, very few cases that actually led to the choice of a different IOL, and K versus TK values do not lead to large changes in IOL choice. The third question we posed was, do TK values change astigmatism display? For that matter, we compared the astigmatism magnitude between K and TK values. We looked at the difference vector magnitude, and we compared the vectors for oblique and horizontal and vertical astigmatism themselves. On the table on the left side, you can see the results. So basically, there were only minuscule differences in K and TK magnitude. What I found interesting, though, that was that the difference vector magnitude was almost a quarter diopter. So if the magnitude was pretty equal, it means that the orientation or the axis of the steep meridian seemed to show differences in some cases. Basically, on the right side, you can see that the difference vector was largest in cases that had against the rule astigmatism. So with the rule astigmatism eyes, we had a difference vector of more than 0.5 diopters only in 22% of the cases. We had a difference vector of more than 0.5 diopters in 60% cases of the against the rule eyes, and 18% of those eyes had an oblique astigmatism. If the difference vector was more than 0.25 diopters, it was a bit more of a trade-off. We had 39% of those eyes with the rule astigmatism, 42% had against the rule astigmatism, and 20% were oblique. What are the conclusions from the study? So the TK concept resembles the Gulstra model and therefore should work in normal eyes with established IOL constant. And yes, the concept seems to work. The smaller studies showed utility of TK in special eyes. In the larger study, we showed that only minuscule changes in IOL power of normal eyes are to be found. The anterior to posterior radius does not resemble the Leo Brenner model. It is systematically, or the posterior radius is systematically different than in other devices. So be a bit cautious if you use it in thick lens IOL formulas, and be a bit cautious if you use it in any indices or regressions that take the posterior curvature into account. We found, compared to our other findings, relatively high difference vectors in astigmatism display. I think that'll be interesting if we look at further studies that dive into the topic of the utility of TK values for toric IOL calculation. So we have a green mark for keratoconus, post-DMAC eyes, laser vision correction eyes, normal eyes, and a bit of a question mark for toric IOLs. We are gonna quickly dive into that topic, and I'm just going to share a few thoughts on toric IOL calculations. Basically, the first step, if you counsel patients for toric or for premium IOLs, especially for toric IOLs and toric multifocal IOLs, you have a bit of expectation management to do. And I think it's always helpful to be realistic of the outcomes. So if we look at the outcomes of IOL calculation regarding the spherical equivalent power, we are somewhere around 75 to 80% within half a diopter. If we pair that with astigmatism correction outcomes in toric IOLs, if we look at the larger newer studies and the newer formulae, depending on the study, we are somewhere between 52 and 75 to 80% of all cases within half a diopter. The best would be combining those into something like the defocus equivalent. Unfortunately, there's not much to find about the defocus equivalent in those studies, but be aware that your chance to make those patients happy are somewhere between 50 and 80%. In other eyes, you may have more than half a diopter of defocus or astigmatism left. So that's something you should take into consideration when talking to the patient. You should have a plan B, enhancement with a laser or a center that does that for you, maybe additive IOLs, or maybe the patient will be happy with glasses afterwards. You just have to tell him beforehand that chances are there that you might not get the full goal. The next thing to take into consideration is your surgically induced astigmatism, how to use those values. Basically, if you keep track of your surgically induced astigmatism, maybe by taking biometry after surgeries, I would advise you to at least leave, I think 4 to 6 weeks are the minimum. I'd rather have 3 months values. If you try to use those values in toric IOL calculation, you should use the centroid values. Now, if you don't know how to calculate them, there's a pretty good calculator, the Abulafia double angle plot tool that you can download on the ASCRS site. You can just put in your cases and it'll give you the centroid you can use with any toric calculator. Obviously, there's going to be differences here in a study that looked at temporal incisions versus superior incisions. Superior incisions tend to be a bit higher from the effect and have a bit more variation. Still, if you know your surgically induced astigmatism, it helps you in the planning. The next step is obviously the measurement of your eye. If you are working with toric IOLs, you need to make sure that the measurement quality was high. With the iMaster 700, you should check that the corneal measurement values show no exclamation marks, no warnings. You should look that the cornea was detected, that the lens was detected, and that the keratometry had a high quality and that you don't see any smear or smearing in the points. If you have the luxury of having tomography or topography, and I think working with toric IOLs, this is something you should look at and you should have, then you should basically look at the regularity of the astigmatism. And if you have the luxury of having a second device, obviously you should validate it with a second measurement. You can also do that with the same device. So especially in cases of low astigmatism magnitude, where the measurement quality itself or where the repeatability of the measurement is of question, I would just do a second biometry measurement and check that the difference between both measurements is not too high. Otherwise, I would maybe use some lubricating eye drops and see if I can get the measurement or if I can gain a bit of repeatability in the measurement from that. Now, what device to use? If I have the choice between a biometer or tomograph, there are some studies that looked at different devices. On the left side, you can see a study by Hoffman who looked at the difference vectors between the refractive astigmatism of pseudophakic eyes and the display of several devices. On the right side, you can see the same in a study, again, with Seth Pontanelli among the authors, or as a senior author. Basically, you can see that the iMaster 700 does a good job, especially with the TK values to come close to those refractions. On the right side with the double angle plots, you can basically see that the centroid of the TK measurements, which is the double angle plot with the number C, is very close to 0, whereas the Scheimpflug device it was compared against showed larger deviations. I would go for the IOL Master 700 if I had the choice between iMaster 700 and Scheimpflug devices and use the TK keratometry values. Another study that looked at the integrated K method of the Barrett calculator, which does median vector combinations. Basically, if you looked at the precision of the singular devices, you can see again that the keratometry method of the iMaster 700 worked quite well, and that the Scheimpflug device had a bit less precision in there. So I would stick to my iMaster 700 in that case and just use my Scheimpflug device to get a bit of validation from that. Now, what do I do with my values? Do I use TK values? Do I use K values? If I use K values, we looked at the several nomograms that are out there for basically astigmatism correction. So we used the Abulafia-Koch nomogram, the Goggin nomogram, the Lahoud nomogram, and basically from our group, the Castrop nomogram. It was quite interesting. All nomograms worked a bit better than K values alone, not TK values, but K values. The Abulafia-Koch nomogram tended to overcorrect slightly the systematic errors, whereas basically all other nomograms slightly undercorrected the systematic effect. Still, all showed utility and all were nice to use with K values. And where do you use those values? Basically, if you say you don't want to do anything with an Excel and that's too much of a hassle, the new generation formulae, Kane formula, Evo formula, the Barrett formula, also our Castrop formula, you can find several calculators for toric IOLs in the internet that you can use that all account for posterior astigmatism or intraocular astigmatism, and that will give you results that are designed to up your toric IOL results. After surgery, you can, or you should, check the toric IOL orientation and see if there's maybe misfit of the orientation of the IOL. That was a very small study. I just found it interesting that if you did a repositioning, that a remeasurement with the IOL master TK values led to the best results, but it was only a very small case study. Certainly, the results need to be repeated in larger studies. I still thought it was nice, but always consider if you use a remeasurement or new measurement to fix the orientation of the toric IOL, make sure that it's not the changes do not come from surgically induced astigmatism and corneal edema, which you can see on the tomography on the right side, where you can see basically by the very thick pachymetry in the CCI, which was placed superiorly with a thickness of 943, that the edema obviously has an effect on astigmatism. So I would not use that measurement to reorientate my IOL, but I would stick to the preoperative measurements in that case. So thank you for the attention. It was fun to dive into those topics. If there are any further questions or if you need to step into contact, you can basically find my email in my publications. And I will now gladly introduce Dr. Micheletti.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Morgan Micheletti. I'm a cataract, refractive, and anterior segment surgeon at Berkeley Eye Center in Houston, Texas, where I'm also a partner and director of research. So today I'm going to talk about, or this evening, I'm going to talk about Veracity and how I use it, how it has made me significantly more efficient. It's just significantly reduced the amount of time I spend prepping charts. It reduces medical errors. It's been a huge benefit to me, my staff, my patients. So with that, let's get started. Now we have some sample cases here. This is kind of the main screen of Veracity. And with this, you have a couple different options. Now this is just, again, these are all kind of preloaded patients, but there's other options such as procedures, data analytics, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. But let's start with just a patient, and let's just say that this is a patient that's come in for a cataract evaluation. Now, I like to use Veracity in particular on a tablet. You can use an iPad or Surface or whatever your tablet of choice may be. I started with an iPad, but have since moved to just a handheld tablet, like a convertible notebook. And I really like that because you can show the patient kind of what you're working on as well. So let's say I'm about to walk in to a patient's room, and I would select the patient. And this is kind of the display that comes up. All right, so we're going to select both eyes, left eye first. It doesn't matter what you select here. You can always change it later. But this will pull in all of our data from our different devices. And of course, it depends which devices you actually connect and whether your interface will actually, whether your EMR, how well your EMR will interface. But let's say this is a patient who comes in and wants cataract surgery with you. Now, this is already suggesting different lenses here, and it'll suggest that based off of a lot of times you can integrate a survey. Now, here I don't have a survey integrated. It is something that I have used before, where you can have patients scan a QR code that's custom to them. They can answer questions based on how they like to, when and where they like to wear glasses, whether they're willing to spend money, all that kind of stuff. And Veracity will actually suggest a lens based on your preferences as well. So it's recommending a toric lens for this patient in the right eye and a monofocal in the left eye. But, let's say that we talk to them and they're actually interested in, let's say they're interested in a trifocal, for example. Now, in the right eye, it looks like they're probably going to need a toric, right? We can look here and see our net astigmatism, which is kind of cool. So we see their current refraction, their anterior Ks, their posterior Ks, and then our net astigmatism. So what are we actually going to treat? Now, the other cool thing is we can actually see part of the topography here from the IOL Master 700 right here on the main display. And just by simply selecting this trifocal lens, we see that here's the predicted refraction afterwards. Now, for me, that's a little high, so I would come in here and manually adjust. A little too much sil treatment there, even though it's against the rule. I want to leave them pretty close to plano here. That's a little better. And then I know that, maybe I'll operate on axis. That'll knock down a little bit more sil, and this will shift my incisions here. And there we go. So that's probably about what I would do for this patient. And then on the left eye, let's say we were thinking about the same thing. Well, not quite enough sil for a toric, but let's say we wanted to do some arcuates or LRIs. We just click a button and instantaneously we're calculating. Now, what if you don't do manual LRIs? What if you do femtosecond? Well, really simple. Click here. You've got 3 different options, and you can even determine where they are, the depth, your optical zone, everything can be customized. It'll automatically move your incision out of the way. But let's say, hey, you know what? That's not where I like to operate. Well, okay, fine. Let's say that we would, click here. Let's say we would click here and click this, and it would show that, hey, there's a conflict, but maybe your AKs are inside of where your incisions would be. That's always an option. But let's just, for simplicity's sake, go with this and say, okay, we'll operate on axis. All right. So again, that would probably be kind of a more challenging axis to operate on, but definitely possible. So, something like this, or what I like to do sometimes is I'll do a combined LRI incision, or even just split my incision, move my incision a little more superior and do that manually, and just know that, hey, my LRIs are here and here. But this gives us a pretty good plan. Now, obviously we want to review a couple other things, right? Which test should we use? Well, we have a slew of tests here that have already been put in, from the IOL Master 700 to the Pentacam to Cassini, all of these things. And that's the thing, is Veracity is really device agnostic. Now, you can go into your images here, and this is what's kind of cool. You can select a lot of your different scans. So I can see the IOL Master 700 right here if I want it. My Pentacam, right here as well. All right. My topography, here's my atlas. So everything is here that I need for this patient. All right. Now you could even have fundus photos from your Claris, all right, to even an OCT. Here's a Linstar. So it's great to have all these different diagnostics here and integrated. Now, one of the other cool things about this is we can look at them all here, all these different measurements, and it's just a pool of data if you like looking at a whole bunch of data. But how can we integrate this in the cataract surgery plan? Well, when we come down here, we can say, you know what? All right, here's our IOL Master 700. Here's our scanning. Here's the other cool thing. We can actually look at all of our biometry, all of our images here. All right. Maybe a little something questionable going on in the fovea there. Definitely would want to see an OCT. But let's say that was a normal OCT for this case. And let's say we wanted to say, hey, okay, let's integrate a couple more K values. Well, you can actually come in and select up to 3 different anterior Ks, or you could go with your TK, or the Zeiss TK, the total K. But let's say we wanted to kind of sum a few different tests, the ones that we perhaps trust the most, and everyone may be a little different on that, but these 3 values are relatively similar, and then we can select an integrated K. And we'll approve I with integrated K. And this is what's kind of cool, is so now it's going to take this integrated K from different machines and give us a more accurate, hopefully more accurate picture of their toric needs. Now with this, you can see, hey, you know what? All of a sudden we've bumped up. Now for me, that's about the range where I would start considering a toric. And so let's say that that's what we did. Let's say that we switched our lens here to a trifocal toric. And there we go. All right. Now, in terms of scheduling, this is where your counselors can come in. They can choose what date, add a procedure. I let my surgical counselors handle that. Same thing here. You can choose. These are all some of the different options we have. This would be what we would call a premium with digital microscope marker. It just tells my surgical staff that, hey, I do need this pulled up in Veracity. I need this pulled up in Callisto in my microscope, or whatever digital marker you're using. Even though you plan cases in this, you don't have to necessarily use this if you don't have Callisto. You can still print this out and say, hey, like, I'm going to put a toric lens in at 8 degrees in the right eye here, and we're going to put a toric lens in at 150 degrees. And whatever you use for your digital microscope marker, you can simply input that in. All right, so that's another kind of cool capability as well. What I like to do is once I've approved these, so let's say we're doing the left eye first, it's the non-dominant eye, it will give me some alerts and warnings. For instance, this patient loves wearing monovision contacts, wants to be spectacle free at distance only, and has some mild dry eye. Now that's a lot. That's primarily from both the survey and some of the medical history. But let's say that, for this particular example, this isn't what it said. Just to kind of show you here. So with this particular case, we could approve the plan. You could just approve one eye, or you could go ahead and approve both, depending on your comfort level with that and when you plan to see the patient back. But you certainly can wait to see how the first eye does. Now, what's cool is it can also give you an OR sheet. We actually use this as our face sheet. So this is printed and put up, and it follows the patients in the OR. And what's great is it's got my signature right here. I'm the only one that can put that there. There's no manually written numbers. This is the lens that I chose. There's no chance of transcription error, and everything's laid out nicely. All right, I've got all of the information I need. The other cool thing is, while of course we hope to never need it, we have our backup lenses right here. So let's say something happened and you wanted, you needed a 3-piece or something else. Now, I don't know that I would technically use a 3-piece multifocal, but if whatever your 3-piece of choice would be for any of these cases, whether it was an A60, a CT Lucia, or a LAL, whatever your 3-piece of choice is in these sorts of situations as a backup, you can manually set. So just a cool way to be able to use this software. Now, let's say that we had, I'll unapprove this, and let's just say that this was a patient who wanted to do monovision. Well, we could come back over here to, in this case, we'd put a toric lens in. And let's say we would choose, we'll go with the Invista because that's what it already chose here. Now, let's say it's already got the right eye is the distance eye. Now, let's say that the left eye is the near eye. All right, so we just select near, and it'll automatically kind of go forward with showing you which eye. And it shows right up here, non-dominant eye, right? So I know that this is the eye I'm going to put as my near eye. And you can manually adjust your target over here as needed. So pretty cool, the capabilities it can do. Now, of course, on my right eye here, I'm going to target a little closer to plano, given that it is my distance eye. There we go. And we'll do the non-dominant eye first for monovision. Now, here, of course, my staff would change this to our different surgical package, regardless, but let's say this is a patient who also happens to have some glaucoma. All right, so, and I'm going to do some MIG. So maybe I'm going to do let's say we'll do some eye stents, and with that, we'll do a streamline. And over here, just to be nice to everyone, include everyone, we'll do a Hydrus and an Omni. There we go. All right, now what's cool is this will actually show up on the sheet now once it's approved. And the other thing you'll notice is it even has the codes, right? So it automatically tells your staff, hey, we need a 66991 and a 66174. And same thing on the other side, 66991, 66174. And of course, it's even updated on the document up here at the top. So pretty cool. All right, very fluid, very cool. Now this can be used for a couple other things as well. There is an OR module where you can actually do the timeout. You can right here set your timeout. You can go ahead and even sign your OR document. So there is capabilities to use this for more than just planning. You can actually use it as your op note and surgical tracking. So let's go back to the cataract surgery plan here, and I just want to show you one other thing. Let's say this was also a dense lens, okay, and I wanted to use trypan maybe. All right, so come in here. Oh, let's say they had a small pupil too, so now you can ring and some trypan blue. All right, now all of a sudden this becomes a complex cataract, and now we'll approve it. And there we go, even the codes, everything's updated, and we're ready to go. All right, so that's how I like to use it. Now, another way I like to utilize this is showing the patient exactly what they're going to get. Let's say that this patient comes in. Let me kind of reset everything here real quick. So we'll just set everything for a monofocal real quick. All right. So patients don't necessarily understand toricity and astigmatism and outcomes and targeting, but they do understand numbers, and numbers can be made pretty simple. So I will show patients, especially those with high astigmatism, I will show them their predicted final refraction. I'll say, look, this is your predicted glasses prescription if you go forward with the standard insurance covered option. But let me show you what happens if we go ahead and do the, one of the upgrades, if we treat your astigmatism. All of a sudden you can see that number gets a lot smaller. And, we'll adjust it here just to kind of be as close to plano as we can. Maybe a little different lens that has a little more astigmatism treatment at the corneal plane, at a T3. That's a T4. Go down to a T3. And there we go. And so, I may even take this somewhere in here just to get close to plano and show, hey, look, we can get you basically to 0. All right, that's effectively where we're getting you. Again, I probably wouldn't target plus there, but we're getting you close to 0. And patients see that, and in conjunction with other tools you can use, it really can help, really can help the patient understand, like, oh, wow, okay, so the numbers are bigger in my glasses prescription unless we treat the astigmatism. Okay, that makes sense. So just another fun tool. Now let's go back to our patients here. And what's cool is as your patients get added into the system, as their IOL Master 700 is obtained, this is automatically created. And this will show up. So what's great is on a cataract evaluation day, as the pictures are being taken, they're just starting to show up here. Or you can quickly search for them right here as well. So let's say I'm looking for LASIK, and here you go. So LASIK Veracity, this patient did have a history of LASIK, all right, in both eyes, myopic LASIK. And you can see here what we'll do is we're going to come in and we can actually choose right here, hey, this patient had prior myopic LASIK. Now, obviously, this is a test case. This isn't someone who truly had prior myopic LASIK. But what's cool is in a patient who did have prior myopic LASIK, many times the system itself right here will flag you and say, hey, warning, these K values look a little funny. It looks like they may have had prior myopic or hyperopic or RK or whatever. It'll even make a suggestion, which is pretty cool. So with this, we'll go ahead and come in here and look at True K with RX. Now, in this case, a lot of times I don't have the current refraction in. I typically go with the Barrett True K no RX. But again, it's just, just depending on kind of what you like to use. Let's see. Let's see if it doesn't access it with the font. Okay. So let's go ahead and choose our TKs here. There we go. And again, like I said, I typically use my no RX for the most part. So just go here. And our target chosen. All right. So here we go. So, and of course, it's a similar case as the last one, but with a few simple clicks, and I apologize, some of these weren't pre-selected ahead of time like they normally would be automatically because this was already a used test case. But let's say this patient had hyperopic PRK in one eye and myopic LASIK in the other. Maybe they had some monovision, and here's where they ended up. So all of this is automatically done on the fly. Now, if you question this, you're like, I don't know if I believe that. You can actually click right here, these 3 dots, and verify with your online calculator, and it'll come up and automatically calculate, okay, if you wanted to see that. Now, it's not going to work on this case because it's the test case, but just so you kind of have the idea, same thing over here, you can verify with Barrett calculator. All right, so just some cool ways to check your work. Now, you can come in here and you can click on procedures. And you can actually choose your OR day. Now, I'm not going to choose any of my days because they're loaded with patients, but you can come in here and go by day and get a full readout or list of what each day looks like. Now, you can go in, you can individually control your IOL constants configurations. You can configure kind of every little bit of information here, which is really, really cool. One thing that's actually really cool is, let's say you come in here, and now the reason it shows how many cases I have here, unfortunately, my EMR does not play nicely. So even though I've planned 3,737 cases in Veracity, I've only come back and actually input post-op data for this many patients that technically, quote unquote, qualify for optimization. So I typically don't use my own optimization numbers. I kind of use the global numbers. And what you'll see here is, for each of these different lenses, you'll see the in number and the modification to be optimized for Veracity. And that's what I'm using. And so it's another cool way that Veracity helps to really push the quality of care that you're delivering, because you're getting these optimized A constants from multiple clinics and multiple places. Now, you can use your personalized as well once you hit a certain number. So the other cool thing you can do is click data analytics. Now, again, I don't have all my cases put in here, but you can actually track all your different cases. You can actually sort by pathology, exclude cases, things like that. But it's just a few things were put in here, but not everything. If you have your EMR that plays nicely with Veracity, you can get everything put in there all together. So that about sums up how I like to use Veracity. And if there's any questions, I'll take those here now at the end.